Hey, so I'm here with Garry, Jiu Jitsu Dummies. We're going to talk a little bit about himself. All right. Tell me where you're from. Tell me where you grew up. How you got into the sport.
Grew up in the jungle, raised by wolves. So I mostly was in South Jersey for like the early parts of my life. I would consider where I am now to be Central Jersey, even though there's many people from Jersey that don't believe Central Jersey exists. But yeah, I was near like Toms River area, probably like 20 minutes south of there, Lanoka Harbor, for most of my like semi, adolescent life. Probably from like 10 years old to like 17 or so. Before that, I lived in Jackson for a bit. Actually, in a log cabin. A lot of people don't know that. I grew up in a log cabin for the first 9 years of my life. But yeah, man.
So wolves and bears is not too far from the truth, then.
Oh yeah, exactly, exactly. I had like we had like an acre of property. I was out in the woods every day, like building forts and stuff.
Nice.
I remember like digging a pit in my backyard with like throwing thorns in it, thinking I had like a moat of thorns around the outside. That I probably fell in more than anything else did. But anyway, yeah, man. So I grew up in like a lot of people I think associate me with New York now because I train in New York every day with John. But yeah, man, I've pretty much like been in pretty rural areas most of my life. Even until recently, I just moved to Secaucus, or I will be moving March 1st.
Okay.
And I live like directly across the street from a farm right now. So like, yeah, I go back and forth. Jersey's kind of like that, you get a little bit of rural, you get a little bit of urban area. So.
Yeah. So when did you start training?
Started training around 14, 15 years old. A friend of mine from wrestling kind of introduced me to the idea. I actually didn't believe that it existed. Like, I was kind of like skeptical of the whole thing. I kind of like looked at it a little bit like WWE or something, because when he explained it to me, he's like, yeah, it's like wrestling, what we do, except for like you try to break each other's arms and you strangle each other. And I'm like, I don't think that that's like a real thing, like that people allow people to do. I'm like, you're a child. Like somebody lets you try to break somebody's arm. Like, it doesn't make any sense. And I didn't really understand the sport. So, and I was mostly raised by my mother. So as far as like combat sports were concerned, like maybe occasionally I'd catch something on television, but I didn't have a lot of like male influence like drawing me. It's like even by then early UFCs were happening and stuff, but I wasn't watching anything because I didn't really know it existed. So maybe I knew a little bit about boxing, a little bit about wrestling. Like I said, I came from that background. Eventually he introduces me to the sport. I show up to a competition. I'm like, wow, this is amazing. I talked to my mom about it. She's like, you'll never do that ever. And eventually my friend's dad convinced her, and I kind of started training at one gym for a little bit. Couldn't really get there consistently, and Tom the Blast opened nearby. He's a great guy, really influential coach of mine, especially in my earlier years. And man, I picked it up, and like I just really wanted to come in and give my all. It was the first time in my life I ever dedicated myself like to one thing. I did so many different things in like high school, middle school, whatever, so many different sports. I did baseball, basketball, soccer, track, bowling, any number. I did drama, I sang in musicals and stuff, all different kinds of things, dude. You name it, I probably did it. And it wasn't until I found jiu-jitsu where I was kind of like, hey man, I actually want to try to get good at something instead of just like running around doing all this different stuff. I think it was good to like get that functional background, but when I finally committed myself to one thing, I was like, oh, this is like how you actually get good at something. And I spent all my time doing that, and it was powerful for me, that feeling of dedicating yourself towards a central purpose instead of just being very scattered, which ADHD kind of led me down that path initially, but finally found some focus in my life.
Where do you see yourself in the sport in the next, let's say, a year, 5 years, and 10 years?
Okay, which sport?
Jiu-jitsu.
Oh, in jiu-jitsu. Okay.
Or submission wrestling, how about that?
Yeah, okay. So as far as jiu-jitsu and submission grappling are concerned, I've mostly transferred to doing mixed martial arts now. That's my main focus. However, I still see myself during off periods doing grappling bouts. It's becoming much more of a big thing for mixed martial artists to do grappling bouts in between their professional fights. And as that becomes more of a big thing, like I'm very interested in doing it. Obviously, I was supposed to have a match with Dustin Poirier. That was going to be huge, potentially with Colby Covington as well. So all these guys, bring a lot of attention to submission grappling, coming from a little bit of a different background, even though each of them have, kind of a, grappling experience. It's just different, kind of pulling a star from like that different sport and having them do these crossovers, similar to like what Conor did when he went and fought Mayweather, crossing over into boxing and thing. I think it's really good that we're getting this like crossover and mix of sports and mix of audiences for people to get a little bit more experience with something that maybe they wouldn't have been familiar with otherwise. So that's really cool. But I see myself continuing to do that, trying to do these grappling matches. As far as like my goals and things like that and grappling matches are concerned, I'll still be looking for big super fight stuff that's meaningful to me, whether it's a tough guy from the UFC, whether it's a tough match from an experienced jiu-jitsu guy. I'll look to do either one of those. That's anything that helps cement my legacy as one of the greatest submission grapplers of all time, I'm in. As far as like tournaments and things are concerned, I still have ambitions of winning ADCC one day. So far, I've only gotten to bronze. I got fourth the year before that, or the 2 years before that, and then I got bronze recently. So I'm working my way up. We're getting there. Okay. Hopefully, we'll see a gold medal one day in my near future for submission grappling. But other than that, man, just trying to defeat the most difficult opponents and the most notable opponents that I can. Again, to cement that legacy. It's a little weird, like, we only have like a couple different organizations people see as
top tier.
This is the top tier, right? Like they look at like kind of IBJJF and the GI, and then they look at like ADCC. So it's like only really those two things that you see, but there's so much more than that going on in the grappling community. Like if you only paid attention to those two things, you'd be missing a hell of a lot. Like there's so much cool stuff happening with all these super fights and all these different organizations. It's really cool to see our sport do that, because not every sport gets to do that. Like you play tennis, like you play tennis, dude. Yeah. You don't get to participate in 16 different rule sets. You know what I mean? With different organizations and all over the world and things. Well, of course you might get to compete all over the world, but you understand what I'm saying. You get such a different taste and different experience, and you really get to find out like, oh man, like how does this guy do under this points format or submission format, or like how's he going to change his strategy when it's 6 minutes instead of 10 minutes? It's a really interesting thing that we got going on that I really like about our sport. Some people have problems with it, of course there are, but I love it.
What would you tell a young kid that wants to get into the sport, whether male or female, as far as their decision to do it part-time, do it full-time, commitment level? Because you mentioned something really interesting, which was you found something that you can dedicate all your time to. I think that's where you become the master of whatever it is you're pursuing, right?
Sure.
Just invest all that time. So what would you tell a young kid?
Well, I would say two things. I'm not like upset that I split my time between things early on, because I think that you got to try a lot of different things to really find out like what makes you tick and what you're interested in, what's meaningful to you to actually spend time on. And like you're gonna fail sometimes. Like you're just gonna go out and you're gonna be like, it wasn't for me. Not fail in the sense like you're not good at it. Like everybody's gonna not be good at things.
Yeah. We're not gonna be basketball players, right? I'm 5'7". Sure.
Right. But I think ultimately it's about testing all those different things out and kind of figuring out like, all right, like what's going to be like really worth my time, because initially when I first started doing sports and stuff like that, I had this weird mindset, and I think I got it from Disney movies. I talk about this a lot, where in every and just movies in general, you watch some sort of movie involving sports, and there's a montage that happens somewhere halfway through, and a guy like goes from not being very good at something to all of a sudden being like the best at it in a period, because the movie has to show it in a very short period of time. Sure. In a period of like 10 minutes. And all of a sudden, like, this guy's the best in the world at whatever he does, or contending with the best in the world. You're like, oh my God, I can do that. And you can, but it's not going to take 10 minutes. Like, you really do have to dedicate all your time to it. But my brain wasn't wired like that. My brain was like, oh, well, maybe if I pick up this, I'm going to be good at it. I finally found jiu-jitsu, and I started hearing some of the things that Tom said, and I'm like, well, maybe I've never been good or great at something because I haven't actually tried to be great at it. Like I never really put the effort in to be great. I showed up to baseball practice, but did I ever do anything extra on the side? Like, was I studying anything? Was I really trying to learn extra about it? Was I doing anything more than the average kid that was in it? Of course not. So then why would I expect to be better than average? And once that clicked for me mentally, I was able to shift all my effort into jiu-jitsu, which I did have to find it as something that was appealing and meaningful to me. But still, like, had I switched that gear in anything else, or not anything else, but I could have directed that focus elsewhere, and I think still been relatively successful. But that is very important. Speaking to like educating somebody who's younger, who's looking to get involved in something, at some point you're gonna have to make a decision and say, I want to go into this. Like, I want to try this, and like really put your effort into it. If you want to be great at something, if it's just part of the experience, you're just having fun. Have fun, dude.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things. You don't have to be involved. You don't have to be like a professional athlete to love sports. A lot of us just like, you know, play pickup basketball games and things like that. Keeps you in shape, keeps you athletic. You know, keeps you happy. You know, keeps your mood stabilized. A lot of good things coming out of that.
Run me through a normal Garry day. What's a normal Garry day look like?
Oh boy, it's pretty similar every day. I have a very full schedule. One of the things with like ADHD is I kind of like always need to like do something. Okay, it's very hard for me to just like sit down and do nothing. Sure, like could I like sit down and like watch some Netflix every once in a while to chill out? I could. You know, I'm not saying I never do that, but I keep my schedule packed so that there's very little time to even really do anything like that. So I wake up in the morning, drive straight to New York, have my first training session, which is usually Jiu Jitsu. Go to the next one, which is MMA. I do my sparring. Then I come back. I have to drive another hour and a half back. I go to my school. I start teaching at my school. I have to do all the other responsibilities throughout the day that are involved in being a social media personality and things, you know, posting things for sponsors or making videos and things like that. In addition to the ins and outs of running a business, which is my school, along with an apparel company that I started. I put way too much on my plate, to be honest. This Cash Change Championships brand that I got going on. So, I similar to kind of like what I did when I was a kid, I'm still kind of going 1,000 different directions, but kind of all focus around the same general thing, right?
Sure.
Every once in a while, I have to drop some of those responsibilities and go, all right, like what's really important to me? Like I'm gonna have a fight coming up April 17th. I can't announce the opponent yet because they just gave it to me, but I'm gonna have a fight coming up April 17th. Like I'm gonna have to drop some of those responsibilities and just go, all right, we're all in on the fight. Like today we're just training. I'm not worried about whatever social media posts or whatever drama's going on in my gym. I'm gonna have to let somebody else handle it. I have to delegate some responsibility. But that's kind of what goes on for me. You know, I'm scattered. I'm doing a lot of different things, but I love that. Like I love being busy. For a lot of people, they hear about my day and they're like, doesn't that like stress you out and break you down? It's like, yes, but like I live for that.
You need that.
I live for the stress. Like I kind of need, a lot of times I need the stress to even function, to be honest. Like for instance, when I pack to go on a trip, I do it in the latest hour because I don't have any like ambition to do it otherwise. I'm like, oh, well, I'm gonna pack like 2 days before I'm gonna leave. Why? Like, I don't need to. So like, why am I gonna do it? So, I don't know, man. I like the stressful situations. Maybe that's like what's appealing to me about competition and stuff like that too.
So schedules are important. Is that a mental schedule that you carry, or is that something that you have written out? You write your stuff out for the week, for the day?
So I'm getting better at it, man. You know, I go through ups and downs with how well I do at managing my life. Like I said, with ADHD, it makes things a little bit difficult sometimes because my brain just bounces from thing to thing. So some of the coping strategies that I use for that, I do write things down sometimes and make lists. I try to use my calendar on my phone as much as I possibly can. But even with all of that, like stuff still slips through the cracks. And when I start to realize like, oh man, I'm really starting to let stuff fall through and I'm missing some responsibilities that I really did want to tackle, I go back to like the drawing board and I go, all right, like what can I do differently that's going to help me manage this better? Do I need to just drop some of the responsibilities, which sometimes is realistic. Like sometimes you literally have too much on your plate. Do I need to delegate better? Like do I need to pass that responsibility off to like maybe one of my teammates, one of my coaches, one of my manager? Is there somebody else that could be responsible for this task that I'm trying to take it on and I really shouldn't be trying to take it on? And then the third thing is just like stuff slipping through the cracks because I'm not doing a good job organizing. Like I said, like am I not using my calendar well enough? Am I not like writing things down? Am I not trying to maintain that schedule? So those are kind of the three main things that I would focus around. But I still haven't mastered it, I don't think. I think I could do a lot more. I still have a lot more life development to go as far as like mastering my life is concerned.
Don't we all?
Even at, you know, it's so funny like looking back, like I'm 28 years old now, but looking back at when I was like 17, 18, if I had interviewed myself then, I was so sure of myself and so sure that I had like, I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna kick ass. Like as soon as I get out of mom's house, like I got this, you know what I mean? Like I got everything under control, but it couldn't be farther from the truth. There's many things that I don't have under control, but I'm trying to learn every day and get better.
Sure. What's your driving force? That's my last question for you. What's your driving force? What do you want to leave as a legacy?
So it's a good question. So I have individual goals that I see as more selfish pursuits, that I will attempt to leave some legacy as a singular person. And those, in me, like in my terms, like selfish pursuits, I look at as like my competitive goals. So like being the best in the world in mixed martial arts, or being one of the best, or being the best in the world in grappling, or being considered one of the best, or achieving things in those realms. I look at those as like impactful, but maybe not impactful in the long term. Like few and far between will athletes truly be remembered for exceptionally long periods of time. Like you have to be really special as an athlete. And of course, I'm going to try my best to do that.
Sure.
To be remembered for like generations and generations. You know, you can think of a few people, like I'm sure Mike Tyson is going to be remembered for like a really long time. Gordon, for instance, I think is making huge waves. Going to be remembered for a really long time. I think Hodger will be remembered. Like, there are a few people who probably will be able to cement their legacy that way. But even if I was able to do that, and I hope to do it, I still plan on doing it, I still look at that as somewhat less meaningful than like my main goal, which is to just help people in general. Okay? To me, when I look at the world and I look at like what's meaningful and what's going to have an impact over time, my own pursuits, as much as somebody may watch me compete and get inspired or something like that indirectly, it's wishy-washy as to how fulfilled that makes me as a person in terms of my entire life. It's fulfilling on a personal level, but like not for my whole life. For me, I look at like, all right, like what impact am I really able to make on the people around me, the people that I influence on a day-to-day basis, my students, my friends, my family, whatever the case may be. So for me, coaching is much more meaningful than any of the things that I'm going to do competitively. Even if I was a complete failure competitively and I never achieved any of the things that I achieved, I would still look at coaching as the most meaningful thing. And vice versa, even if I was the absolute best in the world, I still look at that as the most meaningful, because I'm going to be able to do that pretty much forever. I can only compete, let's say I manage to compete till I'm 40. I don't know. Maybe you compete a little bit longer than that. But like at a certain point, like I'm no longer contending with the top people in the world just due to age and age alone. I could teach till I'm 80 if I want to, and probably have something meaningful to contribute until then, as long as I study and do my thing. And I think that will be more impactful for people over time. And that will be hopefully how I cement my legacy. And even if it's not something that like somebody picks up a book and reads about, I'll have had impacts on people's lives, and that will carry over into other people's lives. And it's kind of like that effect where it's just, one person to the next. And that's meaningful to me. Even if it's not like I have, 10 or 12 records in mixed martial arts or whatever the case may be written down or whatever. That's what makes me tick, if you will. It's like a big part of why I do any of this competitively for MMA and Jiu Jitsu is so that I can one day take those skills and carry them, and those experiences, and carry them over into students who want to do something similar to me, or even just want to use Jiu Jitsu or MMA as a tool to better their life.
Push and drive them.
Yeah. So that's a big part of why I go out there and test myself, because it's like I know one day somebody's going to want advice from me, and I'm physically able to test myself right now, so let me do it. You know what I mean? If I couldn't do it physically, then maybe I would just focus on coaching altogether right now. But because I can physically go out there, test myself, get as much experience as I can, and then when it's all said and done, and I'm all broken and crippled, I'll do my best to just try to share my experiences with the rest of the world and help them out.
Right. So I said that was the last question. I have one more.
Okay, let's do it.
What's the magic?
The magic.
The magic. What's the magic? What makes everything work?
What makes everything work? I need a little bit more clarification.
What makes it run? What keeps you going?
Me?
Right.
Okay.
What keeps you going?
Yeah.
What makes you as good as you are?
Yeah.
What pushes you to come back tomorrow?
Probably gratuitous amounts of caffeine and random encounters with mediocre to ugly women. No.
Gotta keep finding that gem, right? There's one out there.
No, man. Honestly, I felt like I talked a lot about it before with trying my best to influence and help people, and I think that's a big part of it. I definitely think there's probably something to be said for some of the influences that I had around me as a kid, where I looked at those influences and I kind of said to myself, I don't want that to be me. And I think a big part of the extra push that I give to be exceptional in a lot of areas in my life were not just from the positive influences that I had, like looking at like John and Tom and saying like, oh yeah, I really want to be similar or do similar things to that person. But a lot of the negative things that I saw, not just in my life, but in other people's lives, maybe friends, family members, or whatever the case may be, where I kind of looked at what was happening and I said, man, I really just don't want to go down that road, and I don't want that kind of stuff to happen to me. I want to be a different person. So each and every day, I push a little bit harder and a little bit harder to make sure that I convince myself that that will never be me.
So a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
A lot of hard work to keep you going.
Sure.
Awesome. Gary, it's a pleasure, man. Thank you so much. Look forward to seeing you compete in the near future. Looking to see who that that April fight card is with.
Awesome, man.
All right. Thank you, man.
Nice talking to you, man.
Awesome.